Welcome to Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities, where we talk about living your passion, fulfilling your purpose, and exploring the possibilities. Sorry, ignore my phone. Let me turn that on silent here. I am your host, Ken Ingersoll, and thank you for joining us today. Excuse me. So today we have a awesome guest, John Schuchman, realtor, podcast host, and coach who helps create success in their business through our social media growth. With 15 plus years in 9 to 5 jobs, he never fit in. He found his passion and purpose through real estate and through coaching others. So without further ado, jump right in. Help me welcome John.
How are you, man? Good to see you today.
Likewise, John, how are you?
I'm great, man. Thanks so much. I'm honored to be here, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being on here. So tell us a little of your story. I gave a very brief overview of it in my intro, but tell us a little bit of your story, and then we'll jump into the transition and how you found your passion about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if anybody kind of asks me what I do, so I'm in like Kenny said, I'm in real estate now. Coach people with social media, have grown a very successful real estate business with social media. Um, and really, I'm like, if there's W-2 9 to 5 jobs out there, I've probably done it, and I've had more W-2 jobs than probably anybody in the world. Lost
I
my
don't know.
last
I might have a.
We'll have to chat. We'll have to take it offline and compare. I think I'm in the 20s or 30s for sure. So, but really, I spent, from the time I was 16 to, a few years ago, so 32, 33, um, was in W-2 job after W-2 job, would sometimes lose job, would sometimes take other opportunities and promotions. But really, the long and the short of it was was either like never satisfied in a job, never comfortable in a job, got into a job and ended up hating it, wasn't a great fit for certain companies, right? Um, and I learned that I had like an entrepreneurial spirit. So, for instance, one of the things I tell people is like, I remember working at Chick-fil-A, and like at 12:30 in the afternoon is not the time to like dream and try to improve things. At 12:30 in the afternoon is like, get the darn food out the window to the customers, and that's what you focus on. Dreaming and like creating and improving is for 10 a.m. when it's slow, or 9 p.m. So 4 p.m. before the dinner rush. So what I learned in all of this, really, there's a great quote by Albert Einstein that says, everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will grow up its whole life thinking it was stupid. Um, and I think that kind of defines my journey pretty well, right? I definitely always had tons of negative comments about how I couldn't keep a job, couldn't provide, couldn't this, couldn't that. Um, and then when I found my niche in real estate, it was kind of like off to the races, right? In my 15-year career to that point, I was always good at sales and always good at relationships. And so when I finally, February 26, 2019, I'll always remember the day, when I got fired from my last W-2, I kept asking the question, okay, what's something where I can combine sales and relationships, but also like be my own boss, be an entrepreneur? And so that's the 2-minute version of real estate and how I got into it and how I've created a successful business. I'm now on a team, and I help lead the team, run all the social media for the team, run all the coaching and training. So it's been quite a journey. We've been very blessed. Like, God's blessed me and my wife and our kids a ton. And so we're super thankful for that. It's kind of, I think a lot of people kind of feel like life should be like this. And really it's like this, right? It's a roller coaster. So it's been a crazy roller coaster ride. Now we have 2 young kids. And so it seems like a circus here some days, but we've been very blessed and we're very thankful.
Awesome, I love that, and you covered a lot of history in these past 2-3 minutes, and there are a few things that I want to discuss further. One, when you were at your 9 to 5 job, Chick-fil-A and stuff, you said there were times to dream and times to not.
Yeah,
And I think of how often we let others put us in a box. Now,
absolutely, man.
I'm not implying that you were hired to do a job at KFC, and certainly you want to fulfill your commitment.
Chick-fil-A, don't
Chick-fil-A,
disrespect.
sorry, Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
but you certainly want to fulfill your commitment and stuff, and
Absolutely.
and because that is also a reflection of who you are,
Absolutely.
more so than um, just working the job.
Yep.
But you could still, you don't have to fit in those boxes in all aspects.
Hmm.
There's boxes that over the years, society and people and things have put us in.
Yep.
And we get in this mindset, this box that, oh, I've got to stay in this box. We're in a box of
Yep.
staying in a box.
Yep.
And even the people that put us in the box think they have to stay in a box, or
Hmm.
so I like how you were able to recognize that and want to get out of that box.
Yeah.
Still do your job, still do what you committed to do, but you know that you weren't a fit for that box or whatever. And whatever 9 to 5. I've been in several different industries, and there's
Hmm.
always the same box.
Yep.
And I did what I committed to do, and what I was supposed to do and stuff, but I
Yeah.
never fit in that box. So in some cases, I was able to turn it into a rectangle, or even throw it out the window completely, and even help some of my bosses
Hmm.
rearrange that box so it fit better to who the people are and also who the company is.
Yeah.
Because even you'll find that even CEOs of the big companies still think they have to be in this box sometimes.
Yeah, well, and it's so interesting, man, because I think COVID was terrible for what it was. If people listening to this go and Google the Great Resignation, right? It is literally like a thing where people worked from home for so long that they realized, wait a second, I don't have to do this, right? I don't have to go into a job that I hate and sit at a desk, right? I can find a job working from home, and I think employers have actually kind of had to adjust where they realize, wait, we're either going to let these people work from home or they're going to go to another company that's going to let them. Right. I didn't, at my last W-2, I was 10 minutes away. So that wasn't long. But at certain jobs, I was 45 minutes, an hour away. Right. So that's 2 hours out of your day that you're not getting paid for, that you're traveling. And so I think COVID, for all the bad that happened and the people that got sick and the mask and all that, I think one of the big takeaways was people realizing I'm actually sick and tired of doing the same stuff, different day, Monday through Friday. Right. I think one of the joys of real estate, right? Today, so today when we get off, I'm a big Philadelphia Phillies fan. I'm hanging up this call and I'm driving to Philadelphia to go to a Phillies playoff game. And I'm going tomorrow. So there's certain days as a realtor and entrepreneur where like you have long days, you have long hours. There's also days like today where you get to flex and be like, you know what? I'm having a couple meetings, a podcast episode, and then I'm spending, from 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever it is, till the rest of the day, taking the day off and tomorrow. So I'd encourage people listening, like, if you have a passion for something and you kind of feel like you're kind of like a square peg in a round hole in a W-2 9 to 5 job, I would think about starting your own business. Now, you might say to me, like, okay, John, how would I do that? And I would say, what are people asking you about? Right. I coach people on social media, mostly only in real estate because I just don't have all the time. But I started coaching with social media because people would come to me and be like, how do you grow your real estate business on social media? How do you do this? And I'm like, let me show you. And so, for those of you listening, what is it the people that are what is it the people around you know you're an expert in and are asking you about? Like, I have a friend who makes signs and I'm like, you should start an Etsy shop. You're so good at it. She could make a six-figure income doing this. And now she's not interested, and that's fine. But so for the people out there who are like, well, I can't leave my W-2 because I could never, I need income. Well, what are the things you're helping people with already or want to help people with and people are asking for, and you could get paid to do that?
Absolutely. And a couple of other things. I For a minute I want to focus on, what if people are passionate about their W-2?
I love that. Yeah, I love that you asked this question because so many times I come on here on my podcast in the community that I run, and I'm like, I hate W-2s. But there are amazing people that run good jobs. I was at some great ones and I wasn't a good fit. I was at some terrible ones where I was a good fit and the company wasn't. So I think if you're passionate about it, absolutely run with it. I'm in a mastermind group with a guy called Vincent Puglisi, and he was actually the guy I called February 26, 2019, when I lost my job. And I'm like, I just lost my job. And he said to me, "This is the best thing to ever happen to you." And I'm like, "You're nuts. My wife is pregnant with our first child. Like, I just lost my job. Like, you have no idea." But he saw that entrepreneurial spirit in me. So on the opposite side, there's certain people that just love a 9 to 5 job. If you love that, sweet, then pour your heart, soul into it and give it everything you got and be a great employee. I do know, right? My brother-in-laws own businesses, right? And they're great bosses. They treat their people right. And so if you love working for someone like that, do that. Um, Absolutely. My only caution to people is I feel like so many people that love their W-2 then get 30 years later and are like, "Oh, I just dream of retiring," get to retirement and are like, "Well, now I don't have the energy to do the things I worked so hard to create." So if you're in a W-2, then start saving so that you can, and again, it's not every situation, I get that, but start saving if you can and you have the opportunity to retire earlier or start, me and my wife, we paid off all our debt and then our house, so now we're thinking about real estate investment. Why? Well, I make good money in real estate, but it's like, okay, well, let's diversify, have money from a membership community, money from this, money from rentals, real estate clients. So what I would say to those people is if you love your W-2, that's awesome. And I'm so happy that you have an amazing boss and company to work for. And I would just encourage you, that's great. How do you take some of those funds that you're making there and diversify so you have multiple income streams?
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to the emphasis of what's a fit for you, for who you are.
Yes.
Because I was in a W two that was okay, but I was in another W two that I loved a whole lot better. So
Yeah.
if a W two is fit for you,
Yep.
perfect. You
Hmm.
know, um, and that's the important thing is finding that square hole for your square peg. You
Well,
know,
and that's the thing too, right? I can't come on here or speak to people that I know and like, "Oh, you're an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur." Like if they're not an entrepreneur, I'm trying to fit them in my square peg, right? So if they're let's say square peg is the entrepreneur, round hole is the W-2. So if you're a round peg and you love that, then go in that round hole and be fine with that. Like diversify funds, but be fine with that. And if you're a square peg that you're like, I've never really fit, then find that square hole. But I love the kind of the square versus like round like analogy.
absolutely. And another analogy, because we brought it up with analogies, and I'm an analogy guy, is um, well, not so much as an analogy, but I've learned that your job, whether your own business or W two or whatever, may not be your passion per se, but if it's a fit,
Mhm.
perfect. But it may be able to fund and fuel your passion and purpose over here. You know,
Absolutely.
so if it all works out and things are working out and it's lined up with who you are and your purpose and you enjoy it and you have great community, great bosses, great coworkers, great
Mhm.
environment, perfect. You can't be any better.
No, and I totally agree with you, Kenny. Like I mean, some people I know there's some people I know that make really good money and they work a W-2. Their passion is just like giving, right? Being able to give to nonprofits, homeless, dog shelters, things like that. So like, and I think too, I struggled with this so much when I lost my job, but I want to encourage people, your identity is not your job, right? So your passion, I'm passionate about real estate, but it's not my main passion. My main passion is like honoring God, on like taking care of my wife and our kids. That's my main passion. And then it kind of is like real estate, social media, coaching, right? All those different things, not necessarily in that order. But if your passion is just like, I want, right, like, so like imagine there's a W-2 job and one's going to pay you 50,000 and one's going to pay you 100,000, but the 100,000 one you would hate and you work 90 hours a week, right? Because you're always on the clock, stuff's going on. But the one that pays you 50 provides for you and your family, you live within your means and you're happy, and you only work 35 hours a week, and you get all this time with your family, right? So I would say, what is it worth, right? I can't answer that. That's for each individual to decide. Like, if you can live on 50,000 or whatever the number is, there's no need to like go and make more money just because, if you're happy, if you can provide for your family, and if you get time with them. um I think so. And as an entrepreneur, one of the struggles is you're always building something, right? So like building this and then building that and building this. And so it sometimes it's a struggle to say, like, I'm good, I'm happy, I want more time with my wife and kids rather than this next cool business idea, right? Um, Nelson Rockefeller had a great quote. And if you guys don't know who he is, Google him, but he was like one of the richest men probably 100 years ago. And someone said to him, so like Rockefeller Center, like his family, okay? So someone said to him, Mr. Rockefeller, how much money is enough? And he said, just a little more. Right? And so I think people like that, you read like Steve Jobs, how like he died really unhappy, but he had a ton of money. Um, Money doesn't bring you happiness, right? So I think more so think about what's your passion, and it doesn't have to be job, it could be dog shelter, your church, whatever it is. What's your passion? And then what's your legacy, right? I don't want my legacy to be like, yeah, he made a lot of money, sold a lot of homes, and then he died. Right? I want my legacy to be like, what am I leaving for my wife, for our kids? What am I, how am I improving, teaching the next generation, some lessons I've learned along the way. So, yeah.
Awesome. I can give you a personal example to what you were saying a second ago. Is
Yeah.
I had a W-2, and it had flexibility almost as if it was my own business. I could have went somewhere else and made 2-3x the amount, but the
Yep.
flexibility wasn't there. And to me, that was worth more than 10 times.
Absolutely.
So like you said, what is your passion? If your passion, like for me, one of my passions is travel, and I love cruises, I love camping.
Yeah.
So that W-2 fueled my passion over here.
Yes.
So absolutely. And then going back to you, how I want to know, if you don't mind diving on a little more personal, but like, how did your wife? What was the support like? What was the frustrations, the cycle? Hey, honey, I just lost my job. I'm going to start this. Or you put your own words in there, of course.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because when people hear this story now, like they don't see the struggle, right? So I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I have a successful real estate business now. It's going great, but like it didn't happen overnight. So it really, I remember, so Kenny, what you don't know is me and my wife at the time I lost my job worked at the same bank. And I had lost so many W-2 jobs before that I literally was always nervous about getting fired. It's not, you ever been in like relationships where you like feel like the person's about to break up with you? That was me and jobs, right? Anytime I saw the boss, I'm like, I'm about to get fired. And sometimes, so I had jobs where they're like, no, you're doing a great job. And then I'd get fired 2 weeks later, right? One time at Chick-fil-A, they literally booked me to go to the corporate offices at Chick-fil-A and said I was doing a great job, set me up with this operator to meet with in Atlanta. And then literally 3 weeks later was canned. Now, I didn't sleep with anybody. I didn't steal from the cash register. It was like, it just happened, right? Now, I think at every job, I had things I could have done differently, but I wasn't like stealing or anything like crazy like that. Um, so all that to say, I remember there was this like AI, like instant messenger platform within the bank, and I messaged her, and I'm like, this person, my boss, I won't name her. I'm like, she just called me. I'm about to get fired, and she's like, what do you mean? Like, you're doing fine. You're not about to get fired. And I'm like, no, I am. And then I got fired. Now and it's so funny, man, because they had said, they basically said that like there had been disciplinary action against me. Of course, I filed for unemployment because you canned me in the like out of nowhere. Um, they fought with unemployment for 6 months to say that like there was disciplinary action against me in this management trainee program, that I had done this. And so unemployment said, well, give us proof of that. they never had any proof because there wasn't, right? And they even called me. So the HR business partner basically called me and said I needed to pull my claim. And I remember saying, like, I was never written up. And she said, John, this person, the boss, I won't give her any credit here. She's like, this person gave you verbal warnings. And I'm like, no, she didn't. I'm like, if I'm like HR business person, if she gave me verbal warnings, where's the documentation? And she actually thought it was stupid. She said, well, John, verbal warnings aren't documented. And I was like, no, they would be in an HR file. They're not, it's not an actual piece of paper to me. Like, this is a verbal warning, but for their to CYA, right, to cover themselves, they make copies of that. So they, anyway, you didn't ask all the back, but I remember, I will tell you this. My wife was a saint and like still is. She was so supportive, believed in me when so many people didn't through everything. Even when we were dating and I lost jobs, believed in me, had confidence in me. And I won't get into all of it, but I went through a very, very emotional few months where I could not get out of bed sometimes, thought about rather not being alive, things like that. And I've shared that story with people on what I do on my platforms. Um, she was a saint, man. So she'd be at the bank that canned me, calling me in at 1 in the afternoon because she had not heard from me and was worried about me. So, but I think, there's a great, and I am getting to a point. There's my friend Vincent, who leads this mastermind community, has this. He told this story in his book where he talks about Frank Sinatra, and Frank Sinatra was about to retire, and he got on stage once and sounded terrible and like didn't sound like Frank, and was like, "That's it, I can't sing, I'm done." And up in the second row in the balcony, one person started clapping, and he screamed, "We love you, Frank!" And that, I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but that was all of the, and then of course the whole crowd erupted in applause, and Frank went on to sing for, I think, a few more months or years. But I think that's just a lesson in, like, you really, if one person cheers for you, and I think that's who my wife was. Like, she kept me alive, to be honest. She was a huge support and encouragement. She reminded me every day that she loved me, believed in me. And then, like, I think she finally, now again, I got into real estate. It took a while to build up my business, but she saw it. She saw, like, the energy, the passion, like how much I loved thinking and talking about real estate. So she was, I mean, it was hard, of course, right? We had a baby that August after losing my job. Um, 3 months after that, she went back to the bank off maternity leave. So I was stay at home dad trying to do real estate. Um, but what I, so that's, she was very encouraging, and I want your listeners to hear what can happen in a couple years. Okay. Now, again, very blessed. God's blessed us a ton. This is not me and how awesome I am. It's just not. Um, but in 2020, we basically asked family members, we were like, we can't afford our mortgage if I'm not selling houses. To that point in June, so 9 months after getting licensed in real estate, I had sold one house, $2,000. um, we asked family if we could live with them for a little bit, and didn't end up working. They were renting, didn't feel right about having people come with them. 2 years later, in June of 2022, I paid off my house, paid off $70,000 in debt and 160 something $1,000 house. It was basically 220,000 in 2 years. And so I know you kind of asked about the spouse and how, so I answered how supportive she is, but I want your listeners to hear is the potential is there. You have potential, right? If you learn anything from my story, and again, not me, God's blessed our family immensely, but you have potential. And imagine where you can be in 2 years. Because if you would have told me that June, now what, almost 2.5 years ago, oh yeah, and in 24 months you'll pay off your house, I would have literally fell over laughing. Because I'm like, there's no way. I haven't even made $10,000 in real estate, let alone enough to pay off over 200,000 in debt. So I know I went off the rails a little bit there, but I hope that can encourage your audience as well.
Absolutely. And I would say 100% applies to my wife as well. And I wouldn't be, I think I'd be further behind
Yeah.
than when before I met my wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because she was certainly the, the support, the backbone, the driving force,
Mm-hmm.
Believing in us when we didn't believe in ourselves, and I
Yeah.
like how you pointed out giving credit where credit is due. So
Mm-hmm.
that really helps. And then
Mm-hmm.
also believing in yourself and the potential,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to continue on that for a second because
Mhm.
there's, you know, not to not to sound rude or but to be blunt, there's nothing special about me. There's nothing special about you today.
Absolutely. I'm
You
a
know,
I'm a little guy. I'm a normal little dude. You know,
everybody has,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, Kenny, and it's so funny because, like, and I'll let you. My podcast in the real estate space has grown so much, and people are like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, I remember getting on a call with some people that now join my membership community, and they're like, "Oh my god!" And I'm like, "I'm a nobody. Like, please don't look at me as the example, please. Like, I am. I've done something. I literally record the podcast from this little office in my house that used to be my daughter's bedroom. Like, there's pink curtains behind my computer because we didn't even take them down yet. The I'm a nobody, right? I'm nobody special. I haven't done anything special. What I have done was just walk through open doors. Some of them got slammed in my face, right? Um, but I think so. Anyway, I think that is absolutely true. You are no one special. I am no one special. And I think, man, I talk to realtors and people in my membership group, and I often say, like, don't forget what got you there. I think the reason my podcast has grown isn't because John's so amazing. I don't even listen to it because I don't like my voice. Okay. This recording I probably won't listen to because I don't like the way I sound. So I have that imposter syndrome too. But it's the power of walking through open doors and the story, right? I still remember making no money in real estate. I do. I remember it. It's still fresh. Like when I think about it, I get emotional. So I can relate to these new realtors out there in my podcast, on my membership community, because they're like, well, what am I going to do? And I'm like, I got you. I've done this. I mean, if you follow these steps, you can be successful. So, but I love that, Kenny. It's you're nobody special. I'm nobody special. And it's a great point, and it's a great reminder to each of us to stay humble too, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I believe in God and I give him full credit,
Absolutely, man.
because without him, there's no way I would have gotten my wife. I'm like 10, 11 years later, I'm like, how did I, you know,
Yeah,
how did I get fortunate enough to even meet her kind of thing,
absolutely.
and these open doors that you talked about and stuff.
Yeah,
So definitely there's, and following your passion, that's one of the big things because, and I love how you brought up imposter syndrome because I would venture to say that when you think of bigger moguls like, let's say, Grant Cardone or
yep,
somebody else in the big real estate space,
yep,
you're like, oh, how can I compete with him, kind of thing. You
yeah,
know, how do you talk about for a minute? How does passion and stuff? How does your passion get you past out? Like, I
yeah,
only sold one house 9 months.
yep,
What am I doing? Why am I
yep.
thinking I could even make it in this space?
Yeah.
Whatever that space is.
Yeah. Wait, and for me, I love the question. And those three things you just said is literally exactly what I told myself every day. I will say, having a young child meant like I had no freaking choice, right? I didn't have a choice. So I think being married, having a son helped a lot, because you got to make it happen. So, so what I will say too is like, if you're out there struggling like I was, do whatever it takes to pay the bills. So I'm a real estate agent, right? August 28th of 2019, whatever it was. Um, and I did not start selling houses right away, right? First house was 8 months later, 9 months later, whatever it is. I Ubered, I DoorDashed, I Grubhubbed, whatever I could do in my car, I would do. And man, um, excuse me, I can't believe I did this, but I'll tell you anyway. I would Uber people, and I remember there's a Target right here by my house. I remember picking someone up there, and I drove her home to middle of Lancaster City here in Pennsylvania. And so I'm like, oh, you work at Target? How was your day? Blah blah blah. Small talk. And then I would be like, well, they're my captive audience. So at some point we're going to talk about real estate. So like we're driving up to her door and I'm like, oh, you live here? Yeah. Do you rent? Do you own? Oh, I rent. Have you ever thought about buying? Blah, blah, blah. Well, here's my business card. Now, none of those people called me, but maybe they will in 5 years, 10 years. Um, and I think so here's the thing too. We all have imposter syndrome, Kenny. In July, I started a membership community for realtors. Okay. On my podcast, I talk about getting over yourself, just doing things, starting. And And I told people for months, I'm starting this real estate membership community, right? And I just didn't do it. I was scared. I had imposter syndrome. I'm like, there's other communities that are better than mine, blah, blah, blah. I had two people. I'll give them a shout out, Kara and Josh. Josh is in my membership. Kara is in my membership and on our real estate team now. They said, hey, are you going to stop the BS? And I kind of was like, what are you talking? And they said, you do realize, like, you tell us on your podcast 3 times a week to like do things, to take action. And you're like basically being a little baby about this and not doing it. So I started, I'm like, fine, 2 weeks from today, we'll start the membership community. I started it. I expected that to just be the two of them, and 10 people were on the first call, then 11, and then 12. I think I have about 20 people now in the membership. But the point is, those 11 people needed what I'm offering. That's why they're there. And so I was doing them a disservice by being so scared to not start. And guess what? Sometimes there's calls where there's 5 people. And guess what? I do my best to pour my heart and soul into those 5 people and help them. I think for realtors, man, there's someone around here, and I'll share this. So in the membership, I've seen that in real estate around here, there's a realtor, and he's a great realtor at my company. So I'm not saying he's a bad person. Has his name on a bus, sends out $5 paid, flyers in the neighborhood of each home he sells. I remember my neighbor sold my house with him right as I was getting licensed, and they said they'd list with me, and I'm like, oh, why'd you list with this person? They're like, well, we've known him 30 years, going back to high school. I'm like, oh, no worries. After the settlement, I was so depressed. They had mailed out these postcards, and I'm like, how can I compete? Right? That imposter syndrome. And so I said to the neighbor, I said, why did you list with this agent? And well, I had already known, they went to high school together. And I said, so what was the process listing with this agent? And this is what she said, and I want people to hear this. She said, John, if I would have known that he would only come to the initial meeting with me and I would never see him again, I would have never listed my home with him. I would have sold it with you. And so what I learned in that moment, Kenny, was I don't need to compete with the big people with their name on a bus and the $5 flyers. What I offer in real estate, right, is a personal connection, a relationship. I'm going to see you at Starbucks at that initial meeting, or Chick-fil-A, wherever we want to get food. I'm going to communicate with you. Normally, I have a text thread with the lender, which no lender does, but I do it with my lending partners because I want great communication. Just this past weekend, a realtor came to me and she said, hey, we had 2 offers. Yours was not as high. You were off by $2,000, but I encouraged my clients to go with your offer because I liked the good communication that you had. That, man, is all I need to keep myself motivated to keep doing what I'm doing, right? And it's a win for my clients. My clients are like, oh my goodness, and your great communication just saved us $2,000, like if we would have escalated or whatever, right? And so, dude, imposter syndrome, I think, hits every day for every person. You have to basically tell the negativity to like, shut up. You don't want to hear it. One more. Sorry, I've kind of gone on a tangent, but it pumps me up because I think people need to hear this. I have a realtor friend. His name is Sean Cochran. He's a realtor in Chicago. And I said he's very big on TikTok, has 300,000 followers on there, probably more at this point. I interviewed him on my podcast and I said, Sean, what would you say to people that don't want to be on video, or are scared, have imposter syndrome? And he said, this is a direct quote, I'll never forget. He said, John, I'm a black kid from Chicago with freckles and I wear a cowboy hat. If I can be on video, even though I don't like the way I sound, look, etc., you can be on video. And so I think it's a motivator, like him with 300,000, 250,000, whatever his followers, I couldn't even imagine, has imposter syndrome about how he looks, his freckles, the hat, and he overcomes that and helps people. And now, anyway, I'm so pumped about this. If you have imposter syndrome, who doesn't, right? I'm going to raise my hand, right? We all do. Yeah, there you go, Kenny. We got both. We all do. But I think again, we'll go back. Me and Kenny are not anybody special. But what keeps us having success is we put ourselves out there, right? I'm on this call, right? I shared it Facebook Live. I don't know if people are watching. Like, that's kind of imposter syndrome, thinking like, what are people thinking about me? But who cares, right? I'll post social media stuff and we have a huge social media following. I don't really care what people think because it's growing our business. It's helping my family. It keeps food on my family's plate. So you got me started about imposter syndrome and there I went. But those are some of the ways I've really learned from other people how to overcome that stuff, man. You just got to do it.
I love that, and that brings up another point. But first, I want to share this picture, and that's kind of what I was doing off to the side. So I apologize if I looked a little distracted, but let me see if I can share it real quick. Because when you talked about when you have a kid, you have no choice, and this is one of my favorite memes right here.
Oh wow.
You know,
That
I,
is so cool.
every time I think about quitting, I think of my son. I'm like, what's he gonna think? What's he gonna learn? Not so much what's he gonna think, but what's he gonna learn when if dad
Yeah.
quits?
Yeah.
If dad doesn't want to do a show because he doesn't feel like it, or because he's nervous about how he looks or his sound, or his hair's a little off, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So, and then,
Well, and I think and I think one lesson there too is like I remember I didn't people often say to me, and I don't say this, they're like, well, every time everything you touch turns to gold. And I'm like, well, not really. I had so much failure for 30 years until I found my niche. And then even with the membership community, one of the reasons I didn't start was I'm like, what if it fails? And what I had to say is like, so what? So maybe in 6 months, I'm like, nope, this isn't working. I don't want to do this. It's okay. And what it's a huge lesson to say, yeah, this failed. And I'm okay with that because failure is a part of learning and growing. And how do I take these lessons and improve and grow and develop and become a better person, realtor, spouse, husband, dad, all those things. How do I become better even in failure?
and that brings up another point, and I want to talk about some of the things as you talked about competing with the big guy, name on the bus, and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to that box we were talking about earlier, is that who you are? Is that John? Is that your
Yeah.
focus? Is your goal to have your picture on a bus? If it is, go for it.
Yeah.
Or are you trying to fit your square peg in this round hole?
Yeah.
And you talked about viewers and stuff, and a lot of questions I get asked with my podcast is how many viewers do I have? I'm like, I don't keep track of that too much because that's not my
Mhm.
focus. My
Yep.
focus is getting out there, sharing my message, helping others share their message, and I know the right message will find the right ears at the right time. So
Yeah.
my focus, in fact, right now it shows I've got one viewer on here right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really care.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think the cool thing too there is it's so funny. Most podcasts, people will say, "Oh, my podcast is this many downloads, this many whatever." Most podcasts, if you have more than like a couple hundred people that listen, you're winning. And here's what I try to encourage people because everyone should have a podcast. So I think, um, and I won't talk about my numbers because that's not the point. But like, imagine that you have a podcast, and each month it reaches 70 people, and it has 400 downloads, right? So I guess those 70 people are listening to like 5 or 6 episodes, whatever it is. I'm not good at math. I'm not a lender. I'm a house guy. So anyway, but let's say, so if that discourages you, I would say if I told you that once a month you could stand and speak in front of 70 people, would you take that opportunity? Who wouldn't raise both hands and say, oh, yeah, for free? I'd absolutely do that. And so if your podcast reaches 10 people or 100 or 1,000, does it matter? It really doesn't because you're impacting people, right? People have joined my team because of my podcast, and joined my membership because of my podcast, and I've had clients. The podcast is for realtors and business people, but I've had clients that find my podcast, like it, and are like, oh, we want to hire you as opposed to someone else. So I think like anything you build, a podcast, a book, a membership, it builds credibility, right? I want to write a book one day. Is it going to be good? It's actually probably going to be terrible, but I can tell people I wrote a book, and it gives instant credibility to what you're doing. I know people that I'm like, wow, you started a podcast. That's amazing. I I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's terrible, right? And I listen to some, but it doesn't matter. And again, I would say, Kenny, even what you're doing, what I'm doing, we're producing content for free. So if you don't like it, well, there you go. There's the door, and you can unsubscribe. It's totally fine. And if you like it and it's helpful, that's great. We want to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else you were talking about earlier, you were talking about failures. Well, who designated it as a failure.
That's so
Because
good.
if
Yeah.
you compare my podcast to yours or someone else's based on number of viewers or downloads,
Yeah.
then yeah, mine might be a failure. But
Hmm.
that's not how I'm defining a failure for my podcast.
That's so
So
good.
again, are you in that box? Are you a round hole in that round peg in the square hole, square peg in the round hole, or are you in your space?
Hmm.
You know, so
Yeah.
I love how you brought up defining what your passion is and defining what those terms mean to John.
Hmm.
You know, because your passion for we could be on we podcast. Your goal could be A. My goal could be Z.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. And it works. And it's who we are. It fits who we are and what we do and what our goal is.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. And one of the reasons I started this, and one of the things I do is, the mindset dream big coaching is because to help people redefine those terms and get out of that box
Yeah.
that someone else placed on them.
Hmm. Well, and I think too, right? You've said impact. I've said impact. Impact's like one of my words for the year. I think the more we grow, the bigger we get. Sometimes it can be like an ego trip, like, oh, I want this many people. Well, wait a second. Go back to like the foundation where you said you wanted to impact people. Like you didn't, you just said impact people. So if you're impacting 5 people, then you're doing what you set out to do, right? It's not numbers. Um, and I think you don't know. I've actually joked about it, not to be morbid, but I'm like, what I think is kind of cool is like, I hope my content lives on far longer than me, right? I don't know. I think my voice is annoying. I'm sure if I suddenly die, my wife would listen to my podcast because she could hear my voice. I don't know. I'll have to ask her. But I think like you can help people. Again, when you talk about legacy, your legacy isn't just you and your kids and your grandkids. It's like, how do you impact the world? How do you help the world? I connected with someone and they interviewed me and they were in London. And I'm like, how cool is this that someone in London is sharing this with their audience there? I would never be connected to people in London if it were not for podcasting. So I every single person, man, should have a podcast, be on social media talking about their business. Like do these things. They're free.
Yeah, and I'll use that another analogy, and then I want to get back to your coaching call and stuff. But if you are undermining what you're doing, imagine how the person who created Zoom, was feeling
Yeah.
that day. It's like, oh, just another day at work. Is it 5 o'clock yet? I
Mhm.
just did this program. you know,
Yeah.
he that person was probably having similar thoughts to what you're having now. And look at the
Mhm.
impact Zoom is having,
Yep.
or Restream, or whatever. You
Mhm.
know, put a name on it. They have imposter syndrome too. You know, Bill
Absolutely.
Gates, Grant Cardone, Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey. Free. She could go on her own show and talk about imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, absolutely, man.
and I love that, and how you've brought that up and how you're coaching people on that and helping them. Let's talk
Thanks,
more
man.
about your mastermind
Yeah,
in real estate, and then also more about your podcast and how people can find that. And
absolutely. Yeah, so really my mastermind group, it's so funny. Like I said, I had always been dreamed about it. I'm in mastermind groups and I realized there's something in the real estate space that is missing, right? People need this coaching. And I mean, even the podcast I started, dude, I started my podcast when I first dreamed of my podcast was at a retreat, I think like October 7th or thereabouts, like 2020. It just popped up on I'm looking over here to see the date. Yeah, so like sometime 2 years ago, right? To that point, I'm pretty sure I had sold like $20,000 and I had made like $20,000 in real estate, right? So again, even then, there was this imposter syndrome, like you're a nobody, you've barely sold anything, and people said that at the beginning, you're a nobody, and so, and I basically said, uh, sometimes in not nice words, like I really don't care what you think, like screw your opinion, um, because I knew there was nothing in the space for me. that John in 2019, when he got licensed, needed a podcast like mine. And so I was my avatar, man. And I still am. Like, my show is for me, like me 3 years ago, me 2 years ago. Um, but it's just so funny, man, because and I mean, so the community, like you're asking about, I was like, oh, what would help realtors? And it came back to, what do I wish I would have had 2 years ago? I wish I Now I'm in a mastermind community. Vincent Puglisi runs a great community. It's all entrepreneurs. So I wanted something very niche. The riches are in the niches. I wanted something very niche, like um narrowed down. So like, it is for realtors. Now it's funny because people like me, I don't know why. People like me, know me, trust me. And so there's people that have joined and are paying to be in there that are not realtors, that are lenders. I have someone joining actually on our next call Monday, who, she's a virtual assistant, but she needed some help and coaching in her business, and she likes me. So it was created for realtors, but now it's really now it's like to help businesses. Like, if you come in there, um and again, anyone, this isn't a pitch, anyone can come on one of the calls and just check it out, see what it's like. I'm happy to help have them for free or anything like that. But what I've learned is people, there's a great play. I'm part of two masterminds. One, Total Life Freedom with Vincent Puglisi, who I've mentioned a few times, and one here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's Inspired Business Community, and I rent an office there. We have masterminds, and so what I've learned is the power of being in a room with people. Now, with these realtors, it's on Zoom, it's a virtual room, but I'm telling you, every Monday, I wake up pumped for a 10 a.m. Eastern call. And every morning, Monday morning at 11, I leave like pumped up about what the people talked about, what they're doing, how they're growing their business. And so I think, and it's not money, man. I'm so motivated just to use what I'm doing to help people in their business. And so that's what we do. A lot of what we focus on is like social media. We have a guest expert Monday, just because they've written a book about real estate to help realtors. But so much of it I'm learning is like just solid business advice to help business people. So that's what I'm doing. We have about 20 people right now. So sometimes there's 10 people on the call, 12, 13, and I'm rolling with those people, man. I've got a really great crew who help each other, care about each other, are generous, and it's been a ton of fun, man. I really enjoy it. So that's about the community.
That's awesome. And you said the coaching call. How do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more, see if it's a fit to join?
Yeah, I think really the easiest way is like connect with me. I don't like email. I think email is from like the Stone Ages. So the best way is really find me on social media, John Schuchman. So if you're just listening to this, it's not how it's spelled. It's John, obviously, but then SCHUCHMAN. You can look me up. All my socials are public. You can message me. But I think that's the best way. Social media. They can read. If you search John Schuchman Realtor, you'll find a way to contact me. My number's on Google. But yeah, if I can help anyone in any way, man, I think I'm so passionate about helping people. I'm passionate about social media, man. That's how we've grown our entire business. And so I started the membership really by having free 15 to 30-minute coaching social media audits with realtors. And now probably 10 of those people are in the membership, but I help them on social media, connected with them. And so even if you're out there and you're not a realtor, but you're like, my social media like stinks, I don't like it, I don't want to do it, like, let's connect. Again, this is not a pitch because I don't really have anything to sell you, but I'm happy to jump on a 15, 30-minute call and just give you, in 10 minutes, I can really give someone like 3 to 4 like key things they could do to their social media that would really improve what they're doing. So I've just gotten good at it. I mean, I've had social media. I was one of the first ones on Facebook with an edu email address in 2006, and that's my favorite platform. Now I'm getting into, I mean, and Instagram's connected to that, getting into LinkedIn, Reels, those kinds of things, TikTok. But social media is like a huge way to grow your business. So don't miss out either. Find someone, watch YouTube videos on what you could do, connect with me. I'm happy to help anybody.
Absolutely. And again, going back to that humble and stuff, there's many times I still YouTube how to do something for social media or for my podcast or
Yeah.
and so awesome. And if for whatever reason you can't find them, connect with me and I'll connect them to you directly. So
Yeah.
but John, thank you so much for being here. It's been a blast. Can't believe it's already been almost an hour.
Yeah.
you time just flies when you're having fun.
It does, man. Well, and thank you. Seriously, thanks for having me, and thanks for what you're doing to help people. I think I love connecting with entrepreneurs like yourself who are out there trying to help people. And so, man, congratulations on what you're building with your coaching, with the podcast, and everything else. And it was a pleasure to have you. If I can ever do anything for your listeners to help their business with you for your business, I'd be honored to connect more. So, thanks so much, everybody, for listening. I hope you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and we'll have you back on for sure. But yeah, thank you again, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Remember to live your passion. Remember your passion, not mine, not John's, but yours. Fulfill your purpose and walk through those doors and explore the possibilities. We'll see you next time.